Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails or Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Allison Rouse, author of We've Got Tonight, The Life and Times of Notorious Groupie, me, and these little ebooks right here. These are just fun little ebooks. Don't take them too seriously, but if you want to meet the band, really, there's truth to them. But don't forget, everybody, my merchandise, my Patreon, where you can find all my books, all down in that description. So go down because you know how much I love it. And you guys, thank you as always so much for all the love and support, for helping me get this far. Let's get farther and farther because we're just a couple away from 1,000. So let's keep going. So let's get there because I want to do so much cool stuff, you guys. For you guys, especially for you guys on my Patreon that have been hanging around there this whole time. You guys are going to get some cool stuff in the future after we reach 1,000. So thank you guys for all the love and support in every way that you guys have brought it and made this an awesome community. You guys rock. And speaking of rock, we are going to go back to the 80s, to the glam, to the raw, to the power, to the chainsaw, and to the piece that Blackie Lawless used to wear. But we're not talking about Blackie Lawless. We're going to talk about Chris Holmes from Wasp. And today we're finishing up some of our little local because I couldn't drink this for just one video. So I have to finish it in this one. Our local Talisman Brewery, Utter Chaos. Because a lot of people have different opinions on what the actual subject is going to be about today. So everybody, grab your chaos, kick up your feet, and let's have a cocktail or rocktail. Cheers, big ears. Kind of what I looked like coming out of the back of the bus in the 80s. I'm kidding. All right, guys. So the reason for this topic today is because I was just searching movies on Prime, and one of the suggestions that came up was Mean Man with Chris Holmes. Holy crap. And this came out in 2021, if I'm not wrong. I looked it up. And that's what I could gather on IMDb. So, and I watched it because I used to know Chris Holmes. Anybody in my generation, if you have seen the movie Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, Chris Holmes jumps into the pool. We all know about this notorious Chris Holmes interview. And he jumps into the pool. He says the best groupies are in Salt Lake City. Woo! Is what me and my friends said at the premiere. Because we knew it. And we also knew Chris Holmes. Every single one of us. I've never been with anybody in Wasp except for the fact that Kristen and I were making out with Chris Holmes while he was on tour with his then fiancée, Lita Ford, on the side of the stage of Lita Ford's concert while she was playing. What was she going to do? Fly off the stage? Oh, she had an arena of people to play for. So I do have a history with Chris Holmes. I always thought he was just such a nice guy. Just very well-mannered. And I know his drinking, he could get pretty funny and wild. But when he was around me and my friends, and we were around Wasp and doing our partying, he was always very, very much a respectful and protective guy. Which when I started watching this video, I didn't see a whole lot of that. Because we all know Chris just sort of disappeared. I'd lost track of, because I don't keep tabs on all the old rockers that I used to hang out with. I wouldn't have time to do that in the days, you know? So, because there's a lot of rockers. But anyway, so I just kind of started watching it, and I'm like, when I first saw it, I mean, Chris was always a good-looking guy, tall, sturdy, just and a great kisser. He's such a good kisser. So anyway, that's all I know about him because that's the furthest I ever got with him. So anyway, because I'm sure Lita would have come off the stage if Kristen and I had disappeared with Chris. But I still think Kristen and I are the baddest chicks in metal for that. And anyway, so he was always just like almost a sweet face, but a Viking strong face. And when I saw him, I thought, holy cow, the anger he's been carrying has done a number on him. Just done a number. Like, he looks like your typical Zakk Wylde, you know, the biker vest. What do you think every heavy metal guy looks like as far as, like, appearance goes? So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something in his cheekbones and his sunken in eyes, and just something that was missing from the Chris Holmes that I used to know. This confidence and comfort, and he was pissed, a little bit angry at Blackie Lawless at the time, but still he knew he was the larger than life one in the band, because every band has that larger than life one. It may not be the lead singer, it may not be the one who's the most paid attention to in the band, but there's always, like, John was that in the Who, stuff like that. So there's always that one larger than life member, and Chris was definitely that more silent, kicked back, larger than life guy. Really, really awesome guy. Like I said, one of the sweetest people I met, but he just looked so hardened and so, like I said, just angry at life. And when I saw his wife, and this has nothing to do with physical appearance, I don't judge anybody on physical appearance. She's got a cute little body, stuff like that, but I could see why, because there's an anger I could see emanating out of her that fed the anger in Chris. And that's kind of what made me stop and be like, whoa, what happened? You know, so what happened to my friend that I used to know, that I hung out with so many times when they came through Salt Lake City? And, you know, we weren't around Blackie Lawless. It was always like Chris and Steve, just those ones. And for those who see the Who's Dated Who, know it was not Johnny Rod from King Cobra that I was with. It was the lead singer, Johnny. So, because I know Johnny Rod also played in Wasp, but I'm not sure if he was around when we were, because like I said, it was just a handful of us. And Chris was just always the sweetest guy. And I didn't know he was raised Mormon. Which you think would have been a topic, and maybe it was, but we were all doing a lot of drinking. Here, especially here in Salt Lake City, the Mormon capital of the world, you know, the Mecca for the Mormons. So I did not know that. But his mom was a little wild child, and I'm glad she was still alive when this was filmed, because she was just so cool to see this other side of her than what we saw in Decline of Western Civilization. And she's like, if I didn't have kids, I would have joined the HA, the HE double hockey stick angels. Like I said, I'm trying not to swear because I'm waiting to be monetized, so I want to make sure that when my videos are reviewed, I'm within guidelines. So anyway, but it was so cool to see his mom, and when she said that, I'm like, that's where Chris gets that from. Holy cow, because she was so disapproving in the Decline of Western Civilization that when she said that, I'm like, oh, the apple didn't fall far from the tree as far as that's concerned. Totally saw. I mean, she looks like him. He looks like her. But wow, when she said that, and it was so funny, like I said, I did not know that they were Mormons. That's insane. But you know, like I said, I'm going to go back to the anger. I think him and his wife have a little bit of anger. And maybe it's just her cold French ways. But Chris said something that nobody gave a shit about my career until I met her. I beg to differ. I know a lot of people that gave a shit about your career. I'm going to have to bleep that. That cared about your career that you just didn't pay attention to. And maybe it was because you're drinking. He's been sober for 20 years, but maybe it was because of his drinking and he didn't see that. And I think that's part of the anger he holds on to. So he needs to kind of step back and realize that anger is useless because people did care about his career. He just didn't want to see it, and he's still not seeing it. And I think, like I said, him and his wife feed off each other in that cycle of, well, I'm the only one that cares about your career. And she does a great job. I'm not going to knock her with that. She gets him out there playing all over Europe and stuff, and that's great. And I'm glad he's making these albums, because that's when they showed him in the studio, that was the only glimpses I got of Chris Holmes as the Chris that I used to know. The twinkle in his eye, loving life, having a great time, still alive in his heart and soul, and not completely muddled by the anger of Blackie Lawless or the industry or LA or whatever, because, he just wasn't meant for LA. His heart and soul was a little bit too good for that whole scene. Because everybody else in LA is really about, let's face it, the surface and trying to be successful and famous or rich or whatever, associated by, and that's not Chris, which is one of the reasons I always liked him. So that's kind of the times I got to see that Chris. Because but just don't hold on to it. And I think you and your wife need to kind of do some more stuff that helps get rid of that underlying ick that's feeding you guys. Because like I said, when he was in the studio and he was doing all this stuff himself, he's actually very, very talented. But those are the only times I got to see the Chris that I knew. Even through half the film, I felt that he wasn't really even comfortable in his skin as he is now, like he used to be when I knew him. So it just kind of broke my heart a little bit, but at the same time, I was so glad that he's still up there. He's staying sober. He's doing a great job, making albums and playing around and doing it on his own terms. Because when he was in Wasp, that was Blackie's show all the way. So now I'm glad to see Chris doing it himself and doing decently at it. But I don't know, there's just something off about the energy of his wife. Like, plenty of people cared about his career. That was the only thing he said about her. Like, he didn't say, he's like, we just stayed up talking all night and she's the only one that cared about my career. So I just see kind of there's still a bit of a facade, but there's still, like I said, she does bring some positive into his life because she pushes and pushes and pushes. But there was a scene I saw her screaming at the FOH guy, the sound man, because she's his manager. No. That's a musician's job to scream at his sound guy, not the wife's. Now I know who wears the pants in that family. It's not Chris. And she was just very typical to me. And for me, Chris, and I'm not talking about looks or anything. I'm talking about what was coming from inside of her that was just kind of making me think, I wish Chris had somebody with a little bit better energy. But I give this girl props where props is due, because she really, really goes out on a limb and goes out to make sure he's being heard and pushes himself into being. So props to her, because that is not easy. But I give her props. There's just something about her that just is off for me. So there you guys go. There's kind of my take on the Mean Man, the story of Chris Holmes. If you guys have not seen it, go down. I'll put the link in the description. Go check it out, because it is an interesting watch. At first I was like, oh, I'm not really going to watch this, because they were vaping. Oh, that was driving me nuts the whole way with their vapes. I'm like, how, put your vapes down. They look so silly. Yeah. So that alone was going to make me stop watching it. But I'm glad I watched it all the way through and got to see the glimpses of Chris that I did. So check it out, you guys. It's pretty interesting. But like I said, I think that Chris is still not fully comfortably in himself. I think there's something he's still missing. Hopefully he finds it one day, because he's a really great guy and he deserves it. All right. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments. And while you're down there, do not forget to check out all the links to the Patreon. Excuse me, it made me burp. The Patreon, my merchandise, my books, the beer of the day, the cocktail of the day, the link to the movie, stuff like that. And don't forget that after 1,000 people and starting next year, And I'm going to start mostly with my Patreon people because they've really, really stuck through me through so much and paid for my time here. So I want to start doing giveaways and different things, but we'll talk about that in another video soon because I'm going to be making changes to the channel. So it's going to get interesting. Let's hope, you guys. And it's going to get a lot more fun. I want to do some live call-ins and stuff, kind of gear it more towards that. But we'll talk about that soon. So again, thank you guys for all the love and support. And we will see you next time here on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.